evening, and welcome to Scale Smart Live. I am your host, Taja M. Graham, CEO and founder of Ops IQ. Ops IQ was built with my vision of helping founders that are really motivated to scaling their businesses, but making certain that they have the right processes, systems in place to build on that consistently. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight. So if you're one of those founders that really is thinking, okay, a lot of this is relying upon me, Taja. I don't know what to do next to ensure that I build the momentum that I want. I'm going to encourage you to do, if not but one thing tonight. Two, but one, make sure you visit opsiq.biz. Number two, make sure you fill out the quick assessment that we have there. The assessment is going to give you some clarity as to where are the bottlenecks that you might be experiencing, or where are the blind spots that you haven't even recognized are the bottlenecks that you're experiencing, right? It's a very quick process, 11 questions. It'll take you all of less than 10 minutes between taking it and getting your response. And that response then will help you to build really a whole roadmap of how to go about clearing the air for the growth that you want. So, I'm always excited to be able to talk about how to strengthen the operations. And more importantly, I love when I can blend in my world of sales into that as well. And that is why I'm thrilled tonight to have a guest that I know we can talk on this topic for hours upon hours, because she is definitely a thought leader in this space, has been working in this space in the manufacturing area for a very long time, extending that into her consultancy to support other founders as they move forward. So I want to welcome tonight Hadassah Eley, who is with us tonight. And Hadassah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Taja. Thank you.
So glad to have you on tonight. Tell the audience a little bit about you and your journey and expertise.
Yes. Okay. My name's Hadassah Eley. I have the PMP behind my name, but what I do as an owner of CME Strategies is I help businesses. I help them to increase their revenue with little to no marketing costs by doing process improvement techniques. And a lot of those techniques I've gotten from big pharma, big manufacturing areas, and deployed them to other businesses' problem statements in their operations. So, yeah.
I love how you've blended it together so well, right? Like, let's talk about that pipeline, but more importantly, let's make sure we've got really a strong workflow that will allow for you to move that forward, and really bring it to what is true revenue and potential cash flow, right? That's the end goal. So I'm looking forward to our conversation this evening. Thank you for being here tonight. All right. So we, as true to our form, we have a main topic for tonight's discussion, which centers around really how to take that lead gen and truly optimize it as we pull it through. So, and we're going to talk about that in the way of operations. I see my good friend David happens to be in my home city of Indianapolis, Indiana today. So, David, glad to have you from the home state of Indiana on the show with us tonight. So let's talk about it in general. And I know we're going to hit on about 3 different points as we go throughout the night. But how is it that you see that workflow, how it comes from that lead gen and processes through? What does that look like for you as you're working with founders?
Yes, I like to even say how we got to lead generation, right? Taking what I learned from big manufacturing is you have to have a strategy step by step. And working with smaller businesses, mid-sized businesses, I got to really understand during like an orientation session when they thought that operations was the biggest issue, that really there was not a consistent process for lead generation. So I got a certification in that so I can help equip that. And what I found out is just like any lean process where you tweak and tweak and tweak, you get data and you tweak. I found that doing that to increase leads, increase your closing rate, increase the number of recurring clients, and just I have 7 areas that I focus on with clients and just getting the data and tweaking how it really increased the bottom line, rather than being all over the place. And not saying that marketing is not important, but just if we have a marketing plan for our website, is generating leads. How many? Let's improve the messaging. And so it's still a strategy, but that's how I've come in and helped clients with really lead generation process optimi like by optimizing that process of lead generation.
Yeah, no, this is very important, right? Because you have to consider even the sales cycle itself in its own siloed version of operations, right? That whole systematic approach and keeping it consistent. Talk to us a little bit about, what are the tech stacks or systems that you are looking at for that data. Data is rich. Data leads us to what is the answers, basically. When we can approach it that way. What are the areas that you're using to collaborate or to collect that data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I work with my clients, I have them give that to me. But I do have a lot of clients that are using Go High Level. I don't know if you've heard of that, where they can collect that or even go behind their website and see like the number of clicks, using their data from their Google pay per clicks, and obviously their data from their LinkedIn ads. And so we're looking at that, see what the baseline is. I love how you can get analytics from those systems. What demographics are we getting? And then, of course, how many of those are turning over into a sale or even collection of an email, and then tweaking using that data.
Where do you find most founders leaving critical data on the table, where they're not looking at it in the right way to right for what the needs are, right?
I love this question. So one of the things I'm finding out is after the collection of the email. So let's say a company is doing a good job at going out to an event or going into a website and getting people to put in their name and email. If they didn't convert as a client right then, a lot of companies are leaving that on the table instead of nurturing that lead, because many companies have to kind of hold hands with someone before they become a client versus meeting them immediately and closing, right? And so by making value added messaging in the email campaign that either exists or don't, if they don't even have one, creating one, I've seen the leads. I've seen really hidden money that was just there turn into sales because they weren't using that.
Yeah. That is a valid point, and I thank Jessie because she acknowledged it too, right? The nurturing of the relationship is critical in
Mhm.
order to be able to turn that into, a true client or prospective client, right?
Mhm.
So, what would be some of those things that you would say founders should consistently look to in that nurturing, in that development? How many of those touch points do you think is necessary for them to consider,
Mhm.
from an efficiency and optimizing means, to
Yes.
ensuring that they really do have that chance for
Okay.
conversion?
So you're getting me excited because I do have a book on this, but so I can easily answer this and I can go on. But what when you change the messaging, and I have a formula in my book. I love formulas, and it's about the messaging, and it's a conversion formula. So when you switch the conversion formula, it has been powerful in reducing the number of touch points needed to nurture that relationship into a lead. It's still just a strategy. It's numbers and formulas still. And so, and I make it very clear I'm not a marketing person. I'm just a process person. But I follow the data, and it has been very effective with clients, to see them have either some kind of messenger that wasn't landing at all, and then use the conversion formula, which is 4 different parts that I talk about in my book, the 4 different parts, and it ties to the emotions. That's why it's effective. The emotions and the problem that's on the prospect's mind at just the right time. And so that reduces, like, maybe what might take 50 to 200 contacts to now 5 to 12 contacts before they're like, yes, I would love to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And please tell us the name of the book. I want to make sure we get it into the show so
Okay.
people know where to go and find this resource, this valuable
Okay.
resource.
It's called Revealing the Profit You Do Not See. and they can find it at www.cmegrowthsystem.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. So hopefully we capture that and share that with you guys here tonight in real time. So let's go to our first topic, or our subtopic for tonight. I think that is our main topic for tonight's discussion: reducing manufacturing defects and optimizing processes. Like I said, you've confirmed that you've been in that manufacturing space for a long time, and with pharma specifically also.
Mm-hmm.
Where have you seen the gaps or the issues and defects in the process?
So a couple of defects come from the fact that you have so many people handling the same process. So a lot of times I worked in operations where the operations team is composed of different shifts and different teams per shifts. And so it's not the same one person doing the same, holding, I like to call it the trinkets and making the product. And so it the biggest downfall has been when there's been a surge of hiring people and not the same type of urgency and care to onboard them at
Mhm.
at that speed that they had for getting them in. Because if you're used to hiring 3 people at a time and now you just hire 30, are you nurturing them and onboarding them, getting through their questions and things before you release them, just like you did with the 3? And it's usually not the same because you actually usually have the same group of people onboarding, and that's where it leads to a trickle effects of defects or deviations from how that manufacturing process was intended to go.
Yeah. And I mean, that's translatable even to a small consultancy firm or, agency group, right?
Mhm.
The fact that, the speed that it took for us to recruit them and get them in the door goes unnoticed in how we actually onboard them and make certain that they are prepared for
Absolutely.
what is their impact to the what we're doing.
Mhm.
Where are the areas? I mean, there's one to say it is an issue of maybe how the SOP is addressed, right?
Mhm.
One could be in who is actually handling the training and development of that talent through the onboarding. Where do you see typically the breakdown happen in that part of the process of onboarding?
Yeah, I see the breakdown, and not to be a broken record, but it usually is the SOP, or in many cases, in big pharma, it's called a batch record, where the step by step is laid out, and it may tie to an SOP, it may tie to something that you have to put on an HMI, like a screen. Um,
Mhm.
and it may also tie into another system that's a digital system. And so that batch record has to be on point and up to date, not just with the systems that it's talking to, but with the people that do it. And if there's not that continuous improvement for updates, then it becomes just a paper that's
Yeah.
inaccurate. And I've seen that happen too many times,
Mhm.
um, where the batch record can't keep up with the number of changes in that system. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you can't just set it and forget it when it comes to SOPs. The SOP should be a living document
Mm-hmm.
that is always evolving and
Mm-hmm.
being intuitive almost in nature to what is the team dynamic in the moment, what is the newest tech stack that becomes
Yes.
a part of the dynamic. These all of these things have to be considered when addressing and updating SOPs. And oftentimes, and I hear it, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, the way we've always done it gets impacted by various external issues, right?
Yes. Even when you talked about adding new people, if you think about most companies where they have the workforce they started with, they know all those things that are really not common knowledge, but it's knowledge within their head that they learned. And so the
Mhm.
SOPs may not even be as detailed because it's known, right? But now you got people coming in who are new. You need to spell it out
Yeah,
piece by piece by piece, so there's no area for confusion and no assumptions, because assumptions could be really dangerous. Um,
yeah,
yeah, especially if
yeah.
you're working with heavy equipment.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a founder a couple of weeks ago, and probably referenced this on a former call, but they are in the mortuary space, and she was
Mm.
sharing with me. Unfortunately, the person who held what was the process for the embalming was a very much older gentleman in his 80s,
Mhm.
but he was the only one who understood the technique or understood what was
Mhm.
necessary for the process,
Right.
and unfortunately he passed away. And I was like, oh wow, just the irony of it all is
Right.
the person who had the process in his mind is no longer here. What do we do? And that
Mhm.
oftentimes is the case. We pray not that it was due to death, but that they win the lottery and move on. You cannot allow for that
Mhm.
process to be internalized. Somehow we have to recognize it in a space where all that are touching it, even if you are responsible to it directly or indirectly,
Yeah.
that it's expressed throughout the organization.
That's interesting because I have actually had a client in funeral home. It's interesting because operations, our operations, they translate, and so we've had a client in the funeral home industry where we did a spaghetti map technique on them because they had a limited workforce and they were stretched really thin, but
Oh,
the data proved they were actually working really efficiently with what they had. So that's interesting that you.
very interesting. Yeah, yeah. Not to take us into a morbid space. We're a live group here tonight, so let's. But it just again, no matter the business, I tell people all the time, no matter the business, there has to be processes and systems to support the talent, the people that you have in place, right? And I believe firmly that those that are really strong talents that
Mhm.
are adaptable to your process and the systems that you're using
Yeah.
will then be able to make impact. If they don't have the playbook, they cannot make impact, no matter how talented they are. They got to have the playbook for them to be able to have the accountabilities you're looking for, right?
Right.
Talk to me a little bit when you're addressing that in the spaces that you're working with clients.
Mhm.
How does that look when it comes to the accountabilities? So there's one to understand how to do the process, right?
Mhm.
What does that look like as far as accountabilities to the process? KPIs, we talk about those quite often, those key performance indicators. But when you're addressing with clients, what does that look like, both be it on the side of the lead gen, right? Or also within the actual performance of the work to provide service or goods?
Yeah, I like that accountability to the process. Because a lot of times I've, sat down with companies and we've taken the time to map out the process that they say they have or that they say they want. And then when we get to implementing it and there's pressure and things are moving fast or quickly, then people want to go off of the process and then we come back with a result and it's not the result we want. And then I have to say, remember the process you committed to, right? It's there for a reason. And so that's part of the way to be accountable. But the best way is to have, yes, KPIs that would be lead indicators to let us know that we're even going to get the desired outcome we want, before we get the outcome. And so I'm trying to think of an example of where we've had some indicators. For instance, there's daily meetings. So I've been in
Mhm,
meetings for like in the manufacturing space, they have a daily meeting. And if
mhm,
we know that we have three deviations in one shift, we can already indicate that that's going to be a heavy load
mhm.
of responding to things that are already not planned for that day. So then they can adjust that day versus of seeing it further down the line. So I guess what I would say that's practical is frequent, short meetings to look at what is in error or deviating, even if it's not a true outlier, but it's enough that it could be a problem if it was a behavior or a mistake that was repeated.
Yeah. 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 Stand up meetings, Gantt charts are all good indicators of making certain the consistency is there. Do
Exactly.
you, and I know we've got a question here in our chat tonight, but do
Mhm.
you find that size of team dynamic even matters when it comes to having that cadence of
Mhm.
brief meetings on a daily basis?
Yes, yes. So I've worked with, big and small, right? And so the bigger they are, the size of the meetings matter and the frequency. So what I've seen in the big, big spaces is they have their different tier levels. And so you have those who are operating, touching their process, they meet, and then another level meets, and then another level, and then the top level, which is like the site managers. And that's daily, and it also has to be escalation, and that often breaks, but that is appropriate level when you're operating a large operations. But for smaller, I've worked with companies that had only 10, right, 10 people, but still they were in a very fluid environment, and the CEO needed to be updated as often as possible. And so those meetings were um, a daily check-in from the supervisor level to the operator level, and then from the senior level, CEO level, to the operator level was once a week. So it wasn't as often, but it was still routine so that they can learn, correct, and move on. And also sharing corrections and learnings is really important within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see a question here in the chat. How do you, oh, no, okay. What role does perception play in operational decision making? That's
Ooh,
a good question.
I like this question. So perception is important, and I think if I understand the question correctly, is do you perceive that my impact to the decisions and operations are important? That's where I would answer that. I've come across a
Mm,
lot of operators who are like, thank you, Hadassah, for coming to ask me what you think, because I've been trying to make this improvement and it hasn't been getting through. So then I just became silent. And that is not what we want. We need
right.
their input.
Yeah.
Senior level needs their input. And so when they see the doors open, they, meaning the operators, see that their door is open, they share this wealth of knowledge that is actually impactful, what's working, what's not working. And then it also creates the positive feedback loop to say, oh, the leadership does need me. They do need to hear me. And then the leadership says, oh, yes, I should have listened to them because now we have a better outcome. But
Yeah.
a lot of times I've seen some kind of mediator like myself have to kind of get that started.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great question, Jesse. And I think I saw another one here. Yeah. How do you uncover hidden capacity without an existing team?
Ooh, I love this one. So I love coming in. Sorry, I do love this. So
That's why you're here.
so I love coming in to help people find where there's hidden resources before they hire another full-time employee. Um,
Mhm.
or because a lot of times there's like wasted time. There's so many ways to find that wasted time. So one is spaghetti map. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like physically watching where people go. Where is there a lot of standing? Where is there a lot of unnecessary back and forth? Where do we have three people going when we don't need? And just other tools to find hidden. Like, okay, you have a team of 5, but if you were to make them more optimal and get 20% back from each one, that's a whole nother person of time that you now have back for your organization before you go. And then another way to get that resource back is also by just using technology. you know
Absolutely.
Automating is not scary. And that's another way we come in to partner. Like, some people don't want to think about it, but if they will sit down and map it out with you, map it out in Visio or something, and say, hey, can you help us automate it? But it's necessary to automate and innovate, because if you don't innovate as fast as your competitors, you're going to get left.
Left behind. Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean that, and I know we don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but even earlier I was addressing with someone the importance of adaptation to AI for that
mhm,
very reason, right?
mhm,
It helps with what is the efficiencies, through automation in some instances, especially if you're in a SaaS environment like OpsIQ.
mhm,
It makes a lot of relevant sense. How can you address that with agency or
mhm.
support in that way. But what other areas? Because you definitely talked about the spaghetti mapping of things. where are some of the places in platform that you really can see that expressed without it being physical presence in the room,
Yeah.
especially for those that have remote
Mhm.
talent, that are working in situations? Where are other places that you see that and are able to call that out?
Yes, great question. You can call that out still with a approval process. And so one of my most painful processes when I used to be in big pharma was investigation writing
Hmm.
and deviation writing. So that had so many checkpoints at the beginning to make sure we level it the right way. Then you have the person who's doing the investigation, getting data, writing it, and then some more checkpoints at the end. But there's a lot of places where things get bottlenecked, and that's something that can still be mapped, even though it's not a physical process you're watching. You can still time it by days. How long is
Okay.
this sitting in someone's inbox? How many people had to approve it? Was there somebody out of office? Is it consistently get stuck at the operations approval level or at the quality approval level? And that's still data you can use to see where there's an opportunity to remove some waste of time.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, even as simple, I share with operators all the time. If you've got a project management tool like Asana, you
Hmm.
can follow it there.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, operators aren't even looking at the very project platform that really, again, is going to identify those areas, right?
That's a
The
great point.
slowdowns in projects. Yeah,
That's a
it's just
great
as
point.
simple as those small little conveniences or reviews.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This is great. So let's take on our next subtopic for tonight. Let's see which we got here. Workforce optimization. That falls right into what we've been talking about a little bit. Communicating data to leadership.
Yes.
Expand about it a little bit more for us as you see it.
So, workforce optimization, I was kind of talking about that feedback loop. It's the operators understanding that their voice is needed or heard, and the leadership understanding that their voice is needed on the shop floor. Um, and in order to optimize the work has to be seen. The go see principle
Mm,
by the people who are changing the work. And if
mm,
not, it's just not. It's going to sorry, it's just going to lend out a really crappy process if it's not being changed by the people who are seeing, at least if they're not doing it. Um, and and so one of the biggest things we do is observation before we come in and do anything. It's just so important before you are optimizing the workforce. Um, the other thing about that, as far as the leaderships, they usually want data here and now to optimize the workforce. And so it's like they need the data, give them the baseline data, but let them have respect for the process of observing and getting the impact from the right people before they see things change. Because a lot of times they're like, okay, I see this is wrong. What's the solution? You got to understand the problem first. And I know you know this.
yeah.
And yeah, in order to optimize the workforce with the right tools, because a lot of times I've seen leadership throw tools at the manufacturing problems instead of doing even the proper root cause analysis, which some people may say doesn't take all that, but it
Mhm.
sure can save a lot of money if you get to the right route before you start fixing things and optimizing things on the work floor.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a valid problem. We're so quick to wanting to address it. Let me just figure this out versus really being more observant and looking at, okay, is this consistently the issue? Or are we
Mm-hmm.
seeing some nuances to this issue? Is it a timing situation to the issue? Like asking deeper level questions to ensure that what you are seeing is absolutely the problem in totality, and not
Yes.
in a siloed vacuum approach to it. And like you said, then we're dumping a whole bunch of, let's just throw a whole bunch of stuff in hopes that it's going to solve it,
Yes.
and that doesn't come to fruition oftentimes.
Can I give a quick example for that?
Yeah.
So last year I had some help. So I had a team of 16 other consultants under me. But for that project, the leadership team had the money and they were ready to fix, but they took the time to have us watch 24/7 round the clock. So I had to man the shop floor for 3 shifts every single day just to observe, just to observe, just to observe, and then push out process improvements. And then we had to report up to them, well, what's the issue? But it also gave them better the leadership when you take the time to observe, more confidence that they're putting money and resources in the right area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I oftentimes say, because I use a lot of sports analogies.
yeah.
If you've ever seen, with just the Final Four wrapping up, players when they are trying to improve their 3-point shot, they're going to make thousands of 3-point shots. There's a reason why they're doing that, and someone is observing the shots, right? Every shot probably creates a different nuance, and so they're trying to figure out what's the right setting in the right position with the right level of agility to get the shot the right way. You're trying to
Mhm.
perfect on it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean you got to bring out a whole bunch of tools and support. It's watching the habit,
Right.
seeing how it presents itself every time in the same behavior. We're
Hmm.
just making 3-point shots. That's it.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
but oftentimes that gets overlooked. The need to reviewing on a consistent basis to seeing what
Hmm.
that really is. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I thought I saw a question also in the chat. The silence from operation is dangerous. How do you surface that sooner?
Oh, it is dangerous. I could think of too many examples, but how do you surface it sooner? That's a
Mhm.
leadership responsibility. Honestly, that's a culture issue. And they have to create a safe space to have those kind of conversations. That's it. It's not a fancy technique. It's a culture issue. And if they don't understand that operations isn't speaking up or has been told to shush either by actions or words, um,
Mhm.
it's an issue. So I've often come in as a mediator, either as a consultant or even when I was working in big pharma, um, doing some investigations or things like that, or doing a lean project to get that by just doing some interviews and understanding.
Yeah.
So it is very dangerous, but a company can do that. It's not an operator problem. It's just honestly leadership culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything I've always said, it begins and ends with leadership. All of it falls upon us as founders, business owners, to ensure that one, we are creating the right vision of what the business is and we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're providing a place, a safe space, as you said, to communicate that frequently. It is not just to be put in your business plan or when you talk to investors. The people that are doing the work within your organizations need to know it just as intimately as you do,
Yeah.
and those that you want to know and express it to, even out externally. That
Yeah.
is critical that that is always happening. It is what really builds the culture.
Yes.
And when people don't feel that they're in a safe space to acknowledge that they don't know it or don't understand it, that is really upon us as
Mm-hmm.
the leaders. We have to present that in a way that they feel like they understand it. And
Mm-hmm.
then how do they bring impact to that vision beyond the day to day of what the role is, which it should incorporate into that? What does that really look like? So I'm glad that you brought that up, that there's a definite distinction behind that, and it really resides within culture and leadership for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Good question, David. How do you find real root causes like tap roots?
I've
Mm.
heard of taproot. So I know the typical Lean Six Sigma, like the Ishikawa fishbone. I don't know if you've heard of Conger Elsie. There's a cause and analysis one. it's like a diagram that really gets you to the root, but it's more understanding the culture. So you have to do a
Mhm.
timeline and then what was happening on that time, and then kind of get to the top level of who would have had ownership for each thing that happened on the timeline. And it's like, why are you getting all this information? And then you come back to see which one was problematic. Another one is a logic fault tree, which is really helpful for like equipment type of root causes. Not so much needing to know about the culture of an organization. And then I use Kuttner Trago's problem analysis, which is a little bit of both culture and equipment, all different factors, but it uses a really kind of stringent logic before you say I have a root cause. It makes you test it, which you should do. It's a scientific process for understanding root cause. So those are the different some of the different tools I use for that.
Awesome. Great question, David. I see another one here. How do you decide when an approval step is necessary versus slowing things down?
So sometimes I've worked in heavily regulated spaces. So sometimes you just that's you can't get around that. Um, but if I just use data where there's a lot of chance to make some changes, then I will let the data tell me, hey, we are having a bottleneck here. And this person seems to consistently, or this department seems to consistently be a bottleneck, and their value seems to be redundant. If I could prove that it's a redundant value, then that's a good way to get them out of the equation.
Mm,
If they are looking, and how you know if it's redundant or not is each approver needs to have different criteria. There should be no very little redundancy. So if they're looking, and sometimes people don't even have criteria for their roles in approving, but I've seen that work where, okay, you have a technical approver, their viewpoint is something else, operations approver, and then a quality approver. So if they are truly giving value and covering something that's not covered by someone else, I can't. But if there's a lot of redundancy, we can divvy out some of those criteria to the other two people who are more proactive. That would be a quick win.
yeah, yeah. Talk a little bit about that from the standpoint of, performance evaluation, right? And how does that play into that determination of redundancy, or just the mere fact that the person who has been responsible for that specific outlet is not really the person that should be doing it? When does performance evaluation come into view for this?
Yeah, I think I might need you to ask that question a little bit different so I can understand it.
Yeah, so some put performance evaluation very much so in an HR process that only expresses at a certain time of the year, right? Be it once a quarter, or once a year for
Mhm.
that matter. But when you're talking about the redundancy of a process, or multiple talents that are touching it, but one has higher impact than the other, I'm thinking that that's a performance evaluation opportunity to express to talents, hey, we're going to need to redefine your roles or responsibilities in this part of the process,
Mhm.
because we find it more efficiently that Johnny over here does it, because
Yeah.
they're better equipped to doing it. Like, when does that conversation in
Yeah.
the performance evaluation aspect come into view?
Yes, that's a good question. So it depends on like if from well, not operator, because typically an improver would be, what we call an information or knowledge worker. And
Mhm.
so that person and their management, if they should be having frequent one-on-ones, and that again goes back to culture, to where there's feedback or after action review kind of discussions before there's money tied to the conversation. And in those one-on-ones where that person get the feedback of, hey, what's the reason for it being late this time? What's the you're holding up? You have so many in your queue. Department underneath you has been complaining, and then the manager gets to present the solution. Right? Hey, we're going to go ahead and move you here because you haven't given me a chance to. You haven't given me a solution on your own. And that kind of goes back to management. I'm put my people management hat on because the manager is going to coach, not give the solution first. But after a while, they haven't figured it out. Then they have to step in. I don't know how that will reflect on a person's performance, but it should definitely happen in the one-on-ones, and it shouldn't be like 4 months of the same issue. If you have a good culture that desires to learn from issues and adapt quickly. So Yeah, that's my answer to
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I believe in a more holistic approach to all of it, right? Like performance has to also inform or support what is the outcomes to the productivity or the operations overall. So
Mhm.
I love the fact that you address it in real time
Mhm.
and more frequently for sure. Don't
Mhm.
let the issue, the bottleneck, continue because of a talent, that we haven't directly spoken to or addressed that with the talent
Mhm.
that is asked to perform the responsibility. For sure not.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's go to our next topic for tonight.
Mhm.
This has been good. Let's see here if they can pull it up. I think that, yeah. Uh, all right, reduce. Okay. Oh, those were the three. All right. Well, then we got a little beyond ourselves here. So, as your experience has been, especially in the space of manufacturing and in
Mhm.
pharma, when you look ahead at, there's oftentimes what is happening internally, but then there's those external factors that play into the spaces that we are addressing and working in. What are things that you see in the future that will have or could be impacting specifically manufacturing and or pharma in that space, especially as it relates to operations or lead gen for you?
You know what? I think that uh, most manufacturing areas, if they are developed and have taken in Lean Six Sigma, they understand how to optimize the operations on the work floor or the shop floor. But they need to take that same logic and put it in other places, kind of like I'm
Mhm.
doing as a consultant. But the biggest place that's on fire for especially blue collar industries is getting the talent. And I would love to see them take that same strategic approach to developing and nurturing and creating a pipeline of talent on the shop floor. There's not enough maintenance. There's not enough even blue collar. Some a lot of shop floor in the pharma space, you still have people with degrees, even PhDs. However, there's still not enough people who want to and have been educated on the value and where you can go with that. And if they don't fix that, there's no business without the people working it. And so
Yeah.
I would challenge those type of companies to take that same rigid and like purposeful continuous improvement mindset, getting data and tweaking it to finding that talent proactively.
Wonderful. And you believe there to be a marketplace, obviously, of talent that they can source for the roles that we were talking about here.
Yes, so that's the problem. I've been really active on. I was a board member for ISPE, which is the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineers. I go outside of pharma, I promise, but I still am connected to that. And it's been a recurring motif of the data is showing us we're not going to have people to do the operations in just a couple of years or to maintain our facilities in just a couple of years alone, either because tradespeople are going to different industries or they're just, like I said, people who are engineers and scientists aren't coming into their industries. There's other industries. And so the problem exists today and seems like it's worsening. I don't have a solution. That's why I said they should put the
Yeah.
root cause analysis, continuous improvement hat in that area and not just think like it's going to be an issue later, like it's an issue now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Ooh, Suzette, welcome to the show tonight. So, at what point should a business stop focusing on generating more leads and instead focus on fixing internal processes to improve conversions and retention? I'm gonna let you go with that one, and then I might jump in a little bit here.
Okay, I like the question. So typically
Yeah.
people engage with CME strategies thinking they need to improve their internal processes, right? I think you need to improve internal processes when you have a demand and a growth that's coming against some kind of barrier that's allowing you to have like capability for even more growth. Um, Lead generation, if the company has data that's proven that they don't even have a consistent demand, not even an increasing, a consistent demand, then the attention really is the lead generation process, not operations. Because if operations are consistent and it's not growing, or you don't have like a big order that you're expecting in a couple of weeks or something, then it's still consistent and not growing. But if lead generation is not consistent, we need to go to that first.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. I think create the demand to ensure that the operation you have in place is currently sound. But you got to have the demand. You got to have something to sample against to ensure that you can find the bottlenecks first and foremost. But I'm going to encourage a little bit differently. We talked about this at the beginning. The lead gen process is a process, right? So don't overlook the fact that there probably is a bottleneck in your lead gen that needs to be resolved first and foremost. So create that demand, but ensuring that you have the right processes, steps in place to getting to the conversion rate that you're looking for, is where I would start first and foremost. That will go a long way to helping you then identify in your operational side of the house the things then that once you've confirmed that opportunity and it comes over into operations, then you'll be able to see in real time if there's need for something to be tweaked or fixed in that part of the process. So, Suzette, I'm glad you're here tonight. I hope that helped you in some way to address that question for sure. Is this a different question we have or the same one? I think that's the same question there. So, but I love that you led with that as well. We want to go and try to see where there's going to be the bottleneck, and there's always going to be a blind spot no matter what throughout our processes. And so we just have to be mindful of that, every step of the way, of that there's going to be some form of issue, right?
Taja, you mentioned that there's always going to be a blind spot. I wanted to give some grace to founders and owners because what we're saying about observing and looking and collecting data, a lot of times they don't have a person or resource to just sit still and do that. And that's why pairing with the consultant is really powerful. So just to be fair, they're just trying to get things out the door and get it done, but it does take another set of eyes. That's one of our taglines. And it's powerful though to have that person to just do that for you.
Yeah. But it comes though also with discipline. It comes with having the foresight to say, hey, we need to have a discipline and appetite to having that outside perspective, that outside lens, be it in the way of a person, be in the way of, with OpsIQ, we have an assessment that you can take, that you can self-direct it, in the 11 questions that'll at least give you some baseline as to what might be the issues, right? But if you don't seek that out on a routine basis, then that does cause for there to be major clog wheel issues that will be exposed at some level. And the exposure typically is at the risk of where we started, which was leads, right? Like your pipeline will mean nothing if you can't pull it through. And that's been my observation.
100% agree. 100%
Yeah.
agree. Yes.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the future of where you see things going, especially in the space of manufacturing and pharmaceuticals. What would be some advice to the small business owner that is with us tonight, even for someone like myself who's stepping out of one role of responsibility now into this role of tech and SaaS? As we look ahead, what would be some sound advice that you would give that we haven't already exposed tonight, but that might be good tips for us to consider?
Yes, I think this one makes sense regardless of the size of the company. But because of the agility power for smaller companies, this might be great. And that is the onboarding of new hires. And so if you're a company that gets a chance to sit down and I know it sounds simple, but to create that job description and create that SOP, and I like to suggest putting hyperlinks and pictures and realize that people learn differently, not just reading sometimes. Create those how-to videos. It really maximizes that hire that you're about to make being that you're such a small company, you can't afford to have someone tapping you on your shoulder every 5 minutes. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? When it's only, five of you or 10 of you. But at the same time, you got to give them a good foundation. And a lot of that foundation can be built before the hire starts so that their onboarding is only, a couple of weeks instead of a couple of months. And then you get that ROI on their time sooner than later. Because again, you're a small company, you need to see that impact. You need to feel that impact a lot sooner.
Yeah. Oftentimes, again, I'm going to preference here. I'm not HR specific, but when you're in operations, you deal with pretty much everyone that supports the business overall, right? So,
Mhm.
um, I oftentimes tell founders, owners, be slow to hire and quick to fire if you need to. That's an expression that you hear all the time. But
Mhm.
why I say that is oftentimes, especially if you are an early on um, um, founder and you're about to make what is possibly a first hire, the conditioning of saying, oh, can I get all of these things in one talent? Can I get that they can do this, and this? And that list gets to be a place where really you are diminishing return on the talent potential that you are going to bring in the door. So really doing a very good assessment of what one role can do to make impact now is what's critical. Don't try to put everything in one bucket and hope that, shake it up and go find this magical unicorn of a person who can do all these things, right?
Mhm.
If the one thing today to move the business forward, to make impact right now, is the simple ability to onboard a new client, look for those talent and skill sets in someone who can do that very thing. And then as that comes off your shoulder, right, as that founder or business owner, and you now have capacity, that'll allow also for you to look ahead to what is that next talent that is needed. But I always try to caution them from trying to put everything and hope for the best in one person or two people to pull through the company. It will not work. You're going to become frustrated, and you're going to find yourself constantly looking to for replacements in the end all. That has been my experience. But again, I'm not HR, but I'm just seeing from what I see from the operation side, the pain points of what that exposure gets you.
Yes.
Well, I am grateful that you have joined us tonight. Where can people find you? What are things that you are doing in this space that can help support, again, those small business owners or even those that might be on the call that are manufacturers or pharma?
Okay, let me kind of go in order of the topics. We talked about lead generation. So for lead generation, they can find me at www.cm, as in Mary, E, growthsystem.com. Thank you. And all things lead generation, including access to the book. And then for general operations, they could find us on our social medias and our website. So social media is at CME_biz. That's on Insta. And then the website is CME-strategies.com. And it tells the services by different industries. I'm Hadassah Eley on LinkedIn. There are two Hadassah Eleys on LinkedIn, and I'm both of them. So that's a whole nother
Well, you
story.
are both of them.
I'm
Okay.
both of them.
Okay. I was going to say, that's very coincidental.
No, I'm both of them. So you'll
Okay.
be fine with either one. And yeah, that's a whole different story, but that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Again, I am grateful for tonight's conversation. I always love being able to talk with someone, again, that can bring both the passion of sales, lead gen is that, and that of operations to the table. Both are very critical to the success of hitting what is cash flow at
Yeah.
the end of the day. But again, I can't reiterate enough. You could bring in the sales, and you should have a very robust lead gen process for that.
Mhm.
But when you start to see the bottlenecks and the influence and impact of operations impeding on your ability to move forth demand, that's when you need to be able to call on someone like your expertise, or others to help figure out, how to overcome those challenges. But data is so critical in helping you to know exactly where that might reside. I'm so grateful that you brought that up tonight, and for your thought leadership and coming to the table tonight to
Right.
support those that are watching us live tonight, and hopefully in the future with the recording. So, Hadassah, thank you so much for being here
You're so
tonight with me.
welcome.
I really am grateful for you. And I'm grateful for those that have been viewing and participating in tonight's show. Be sure to join us again at opsiq.biz. For those that are really wanting to figure out, where really are the potential bottlenecks or blind spots that I am not aware of as a founder that's looking to grow and make impact, take the assessment. It's very quick, and hopefully will give you a little bit of a roadmap as to where to consider those areas that are impacting your business. And we wish you all a very wonderful evening, and more importantly, business growth and you hitting the goals that you have in mind for your business. Thanks for having us tonight.